161 of my podcast, everybody. This has been a long time coming, but I wanted to make sure everything was good. Thank you so much, Daxson, for joining the podcast. We've talked about this over the years, and I wanted to kind of chat a little bit about your musical background, and then we can get into the album because I've listened to the album. Um, so, welcome to the
Yeah,
podcast.
thanks for having me. I know, yeah, we've been trying to get a date sorted to do this, like since about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it's just Groove
Uh,
Cruise.
yeah, so good that it's finally chatting. Good that we're finally chatting now.
Awesome. So, you have your alias Daxon now, but you did release tracks as yourself as Dan.
Yeah,
So can you talk about how you got into music and how you got into electronic dance music and what brought you to producing and DJing?
yeah. So when I was a kid, um, we used to go on holiday as a family, and I would have like the Euphoria CDs mixed by Dave Pierce, and I would be listening to them, and then I'd make like my own compilations as well, like of all the different tracks. I'd make my own CD to take on holiday, and I'd listen to that. But like looking back, that was all trance music. But at the time, it was like I didn't know it as trance. It was just good music or dance music because like even back then it was on the radio and stuff. So I guess that's when I was introduced to trance without me knowing it. But then I guess as I got older, I kind of went into different um, styles, and I started DJing when I was about 15. I had I bought records and belt drives and was DJing, but it wasn't trance. Um, and then from then, I kind of grew out of that as well. Um, I moved to Manchester for university, and I remember like when I moved to Manchester, I moved into halls. You like in with like a group of 10 people. You don't know any of them, and when we were like getting to know each other, one of them's like we were saying, "Oh, what type of music are you into?" And one of them said, "Oh, I'm into trance," and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And they were like, like Arm van Buren, Paul van Dyk, um, Tiesto, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, like I know all them." So then anyway, he was like, "Yeah, you should listen to like the podcasts and the DJ mix and stuff." And then like so I did started like listening to all these like DJs that I guess I already knew, but I didn't know them by name. Like so many years later, like obviously I knew Paul van Dyk's music and stuff. So then when they started coming to Manchester playing in the clubs, we would go. Obviously, I loved it, and I just had the passion to just every time I watched the DJ, I would be the one that would be like, "Oh, I want to do that," and like because I'd already been doing it when I was younger, I ended up buying decks again just to mess around on, like for parties, and we uh I would just be on them a lot. Like I got in a lot of trouble for them in while I was at uni, like so much so that the the neighbors would complain because of the parties, loud music and stuff, and then um yeah, ended up getting kicked out of the place I was leaving because of that. But that's one of the reasons why I've now got this studio, because of the issues I had like 10 years ago. But it was just a natural progression, I guess, of just chasing my passion for trance.
Awesome. And what did you go to school for? Did you study music?
No, at uni it was something completely unrelated. It was like a computing degree. I've never used it. I've never used the degree once. Can't even remember what it was called now. Like multimedia computing, I think. But I didn't put any effort into it. And it's like what I've learned later in life is that the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. Obviously, like I've learned that with my work in music. But at university, I was not passionate about that subject at all, and yeah, I got nothing out of it. I mean, I don't regret going to university because it set me on this path, and I met like loads of like interesting people for over the years. Um, but yeah, it's just funny how things change drastically after university. I did a music production course after university though. That
Oh,
was like the
awesome.
first step.
Cool. And you mentioned that you started DJing when you were 15, so your family was supportive of this, or were they kind of like, oh, this will just be a hobby that you're gonna
Yeah,
do?
it's not be a hobby. Like I was just with my parents the other day for lunch, and we were talking about this, how things have like developed over the years, and they were saying that they just thought it was a hobby, like they would hate the loud music in the house, and so would the neighbors. But I said like, well, look now, at least like that it was all for good reason, because it wasn't just a phase that I grew out of. It was always something like in my life that I kept coming back to.
Yeah, and now you have your own album to
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So what led you to let's talk about like you've really like I mentioned you've released under your name and then your Daxson now. Why the change in name and kind of to go along with the alias?
Well, Coldharbour wanted something specific for them, like something unique, a fresh idea. And when it came to it, it did feel um, like the wrong decision at the time for me, because I'd been working so hard on Dan Dobson to get like a track onto Coldharbour. That was my goal. And yeah, it was a bit of a difficult decision because it was basically starting all over again. But looking back, it was totally the right decision, because this this is what I wanted to release on Coldharbour, to be a Coldharbour artist, and the respect that I have for Marta Schultz, like it's a dream come true to now release my debut artist album on that label. Uh, like and yeah, it's fine that it's a different alias. It's actually helped better for things like gigs. Um, but it was just, I guess, a little bit of a detour. Um, but as I said, um, it's good to have like the backing of Coldharbour and Marta Schultz to keep pushing my name.
And I mean, I'm a fan and I'm a fan of Coldharbour, hence the hat. But what kind of drew you to the sound of Coldharbour? You said that was a goal all along, whether you
Yeah.
were under whatever name. So what is it about the sound? Because obviously, it's one of my favorite labels.
Mhm.
So what drew you to the sound of Coldharbour?
Well, it's got to be Marcus. I think like the number of times seeing him when I was at university, and he'd come to the UK, either in London or Birmingham or uh, Cream. I think I seen him on my 21st birthday at Cream, and it was almost like a life changing night, because like I would just find the music he played and his performances like behind the decks like so much better than any other DJ that I've seen. So I guess I just connected with that sound and everything about Coldharbour way more, and that just sort of pushed me into that direction. That sound, like I enjoyed all the Coldharbour artists as well, like their music that were releasing on the label at the time. Um, so yeah, it's just be again just like a natural following my passion for the style that I love, and now I've kind of developed into my own style in a different way.
Yeah. So what is it like? For me, I like that Coldharbour's trance, but it's has undertones of other, like maybe a little bit of techno. Obviously, they now have Coldharbour Black, but how do you distinct your sound even within the label? Because obviously, there are a lot of artists that release now on Coldharbour with Nifra and Fisherman, and
Yeah.
you know all of the artists that we've seen recently. So, kind of, how do you describe your sound for those that have yet and then we'll get into the album.
Yeah, it's always evolving. I mean, if you look at my first release, Sky Garden, to what I'm releasing now, it's completely different sound, I guess. Um, but you could probably still tell that it's a Daxson track. I think what it comes down to is like personal style when you're producing. Like, so you can like each producer will have their own certain sound, and like I know other producers that when I hear one of their tracks, I know that it's by them, even if it's like a completely different style track. And I don't think you can really ever fully escape that style. You know what I mean? Like no matter how different your music is, you can. Maybe that's just a producer. I don't know. But going back to what you asked about, what was it again? Sorry,
Well, just kind of how you know, as an artist, you've painted your own sound that's even different than other artists on the label.
yeah. Right now, I would say I'm going for emotional melodies. So the melodies that I'm writing, ones that are going to change your mood for the better. That's what I'm looking for, so that when you listen to it, you just feel like an uplifting sort of mood. I guess that's been the main focus for the last couple of years on the album tracks. That's the style that I'm going for right now. Like if you listen to tracks like While We Wait, like it's meant to. I don't know if it does to everyone, but it's meant to just uplift your mood for the better. That's the style that I'm going for. But I think with a lot of trance, not necessarily on Cold Harbor, but on other labels, other uplifting stuff is all like the faster BPM with like a certain style kick, or like 1/3 at 140, and it kind of sometimes the emotion gets lost. I feel, um, because they're so focused on making a specific sound that they forget that trance is supposed to be a feeling, or at least it is for me.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit because I feel the same way recently. In listening to your album, did, let's, I guess my first question is, did you kind of know what the album order was going to be? Was it going to play like a mix? Because it kind of just, every track just kind of, like there's no track that I wanted to skip. There's no, yeah. Did you know ahead of time that the order was gonna, you just kind of, did you make it in that order or did you?
No, the order changed over time, and I kept adding tracks. Like and also the album was written over like almost 3 years. Like when I decided to start writing the out, like actually making an album, that was in 2020. But at that point, I already had like four of the tracks written from 2019 that I would just sort of like I'd wrote and I just kind of left to the side for something in the future. But yeah, the order, it did change. It also depended on the tracks that we'd already released leading up to the album as well. Um, but as I said, I didn't want to do it as a sort of DJ set where it is like a 1 hour mix. Do you know what I mean? I wanted it to be separate tracks because I think each track is different in its own unique way. But yeah, there was also 18 tracks on the album. I was a bit wary of putting that many on because it is a lot of music. Um, but as I said, there were these 18 tracks. I couldn't choose one to leave off, because they all mean so much to me, and I genuinely love the music. But there was so many other tracks that were written for the album, uh, that they're good, but I just didn't feel that the sort of either fitted the theme, or they didn't really hit me in the same way that the melodies that are on the album do. So I feel like these 18 uh, um, are the best ones that I've written in that time. I mean, even there was a track that I wrote in 2020, and it had a completely different feel to it. And we were going to put it on the album, and we decided not to. But now, actually, that one's become the transmission theme, um, and that was decided pretty much like a month after we delivered the album, almost. So, like, I mean, if it had been the other way around, then it would have been on the album. And there would be 19 tracks because it was definitely one of the strong ones for the album, but we decided to keep it for something in the future, like a festival, but we didn't realize that transmission was going to be happening so soon.
So kind of to backtrack for those that didn't see that you were on A State of Trance recently and kind of talked to Ruben, but what what is Face the Future? Like, what was your motivation in naming the album and kind of, as you've mentioned, it's an uplifting
Yeah.
album.
So
What was the motivation behind that?
it took me ages to name the album. I wanted something to just sum up everything that I was going through and that other people could possibly relate to, because I didn't want the album to be specifically about what I've gone through. I just wanted it to represent like the hurdles in life that everyone faces unexpectedly, and how you can move forward and get over them to just progress through your life, because it's sometimes things are thrown in your way. For example, like losing somebody. A lot of people maybe lose like a parent or a child or a close friend, you know, and suddenly they're thrown into this situation where they've got this grief. And like, I think with the album title, somebody that's going through that could relate to what they're going through, but also it could, the, I think a lot of people could relate to it for other reasons, because like, thankfully I haven't lost anybody yet. Um, but I just wanted it to be sort of an open-ended message that other people could relate to rather than one particular subject. And that was the same for the lyrics as well on the album. So they're not tied down to one particular subject.
Awesome. And so, did you mentioned that you kind of had a few tracks written already in 2019? So
Yeah.
did you kind of already know kind of the direction you were going then when you began the album, or did it
Uh,
kind of evolve over the last few years?
yeah, it did evolve. I guess While We Wait had a big influence um, on the sound that I wanted. But I mean, the ones that were written in 2019, it was there were a- all instrumentals at the time. It was In the Darkness, which turned into a vocal track eventually. Um, The Only Way, which was literally just a melody, like nothing else, like not a full track, which also turned into a vocal track. And Now or Never, which also turned into a vocal track actually. um, and I think there was maybe one more from 2019. Well, Sonder. I think Sonder was written before all of that. Um, but yeah, just the they just developed over time. I guess thinking back, like 2020 was a really productive year because of COVID. There was no distractions.
And yeah, you mentioned that they all kind of turned into vocal tracks. Did you like when you wrote them? Did you think that that's the direction they were going to go, or did you notice that that was kind of, those were the melodies and those were the, beats that
Mhm.
you were like, oh, this could be a great vocal track?
Yeah, In the Darkness was definitely written as a vocal track, and it took like three different vocalists to finally get the right one. That was like the first one written for the album and the last one to finish. The Only Way, that was written as an instrumental at first. It was just it was in just a melody, and then I think in 2020 I decided to change it into a vocal track. But again, it took me well over a year to find a vocalist for it. And what was the other ones? Now or Never. Yeah, that was also an instrumental for a long time, and then later in 2020 I decided to change that into a vocal track. I'd say the vocals took so long for this album, and so I felt I'd finished all the music at the end of 2020. That's when I sent it to Coldharbour, um, and after that, I think there was only three more tracks written that were added. The rest of the time, it was just going over and over the mixes and then trying to find vocalists. it was such a long process.
And when you sent, kind of like your first drafts of those tracks to Coldharbour, did you think that was going to evolve into, like you said, 18 tracks of an album, or did you think it was going to be shorter initially?
No, I think there was probably more than 18 tracks when I first sent it, because there was different ideas. It was basically just a draft album, and I guess I didn't. I think I had 15 in my head, like 15 tracks, but then I had the intro and the outro, and I thought, well, they aren't like full tracks that you can release as extended, so because that would kind of make it a 13 track album with and then an intro and outro, so it'd be 15 tracks. So I thought, okay, I'll do 15 tracks plus an intro and outro, and then there was just more added after that as well.
And I guess in the industry now, not too many people are releasing a full album.
Mhm.
I still love full albums, but people just release tracks or a couple tracks here or there. What, like, obviously you've been releasing tracks for a while. When did you initially get the idea, hey, I need a full body of work. I'm working on something. I got
Yeah,
ideas that want to
that
be an
was
album and not just like tracks here and there.
yeah, that came about. The idea came about at this like in March, April 2020, when the gigs stopped during COVID. Because I would always make music for upcoming shows, and once they were taken away from us, I kind of felt a little bit lost. So I started doing like YouTube videos on little tips and tricks for other producers. But then I was deciding, oh, it's not really what I want to do. I want to make music, and I just thought, why don't I try and just write tracks for an album? If it doesn't turn out, then it doesn't matter. I'm still, going to be working towards something. But then, as the months went on, I just kept writing, melody after melody that I felt was good enough. And by the time it got to November in 2020, I had all these tracks, and the ones from 2019, I thought, well, here we go. We got something here that could possibly be an album with once we got vocalists at least as well.
So during the process, did you think that you were going to do more collaborations other than with vocalists, or because I know you've worked with other artists on the label and Marcus himself over the years. So did you think it was going to be a more collaborative album, or did you want it to be, your baby? This.
Yeah, that's what I felt. I just wanted it to be all that. I didn't want any collabs except for the vocals for this one. I just thought my first album, it should be all my music, because once you start collaborating, like even with the vocalists, it's different ideas, and it kind of changes the narrative a little bit. And for me, I just had this specific vision of how I wanted the album to be, and I just thought the best way to present that is to do the music all myself. I think if I was to do an album again, I'd definitely do collabs with other producers as well, just to add some variation. But for my first one, I just wanted it to be all my stuff.
Awesome. Well, I was just curious because, I mean, in this day and age, a lot of times people are collaborating for
Yeah.
different reasons.
Mhm.
But especially in trance right now, because I think, there's a lot of different opinions on kind of how to do it. So I was just curious what your motivation was. But in going through, I know kind of when you kind of gave me the inside scoop back on the Groove Cruise months ago, I know you had a set during Coldharbour Day and you played a lot of IDs. Was it just strictly, from the album where you were like, yeah, I'm waiting to drop these? Or
When
because
was
I've
the?
heard it also over the year in Marcus's sets. He's been playing I mean, I just saw Marcus last weekend in Vegas and he dropped a few of your tracks and the crowd went wild. So
That's good to
yeah,
hear.
like the IDs have been just showing up here and there, especially, through COVID when Niffer was streaming and Fishman was streaming and,
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
few others.
it was hard to like hold some back because I say like once you've made something, you just want to show it to someone. I think that's just natural as a producer. Like the first thing you want to do when you make something that you like is to share it. Like that's kind of what DJing is, isn't it? Like sharing music. Um, so yeah, the IDs that have been about for a long time. I can't remember the set you're talking about, the Coldharbour Day one. I'm not sure because there's, there's been so many
Yeah,
Coldharbour since like COVID, three I think, I don't know, or two. But the I d- what I did was a sunrise set in the middle of 2021 because originally I thought the album was going to be released at the end of 2021 at the latest, and here we are in October 2022. There's just been that many delays, but yeah, I did the sunrise set with the Dream State Artist series, and that set, I decided to play a lot of the album music because just for promotion as well, like you can use the content of the sunrise of me playing the music to promote the tracks. So we did that for some of the singles as they were released in 2021 and this year. But it was great because gigs still weren't really back then. So the first part of 2021, as well as the album, I spent like pretty much 5 or 6 months just working on bootlegs for the sunrise set, which I now play in my DJ sets as well. But it was great because it was almost like working towards like a big gig, but it was just me playing on a bit of grass with the sunrise in the background. Um, but yeah, the IDs, as I say, I've been playing them for a long time now. It's funny because the music has only just been released, but to me, these tracks are quite old now.
yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned bootlegs, so kind of get into my question is about like how you set up your sets as DJs because I know you're working on these tracks, and obviously sometimes on global DJ broadcasts, we see IDs that Marcus drops, and but then we might hear it in sets. But can you kind of talk about how like the bootlegs are a little bit different from mixing compared to what we hear on the album?
Yeah, so the bootlegs, I mean, I still like to do them in my style, but what's good is you can take a well-known track and put your own twist on it. I feel that when you play tracks that are more well-known, crowds react better to them straight away because sometimes they might need to hear a melody a few times before they connect to it. But with a bootleg, if they hear like a vocal or a melody that they know from in the past, they just instantly switch on a bit more and they can relate to it better. And people just seem to enjoy music that they already know. I find like I mean, I love playing IDs, but it does sometimes take a long time for an ID to become a track that people need to hear. Do you know what I mean? So with
Right.
bootlegs, it's a good way of playing new music, but it's old music in a new way.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a few bootlegs that have dropped that everybody kind of goes, "Whoa, I haven't heard that melody in a while," or
Yeah, like, the 9 p.m. one,
yeah,
like
that
people
one
people
kind of
really enjoy that
goes
because everyone
crazy.
knows that track, don't they?
Yeah. I, I think it's one of those like nostalgic trance tracks that like we heard a long time ago and then like
Yeah,
people didn't play for a very long time.
yeah,
And then now it's kind of known as a classic track that people are dropping.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I know you can't really talk about details coming up for the Groove Cruise, but other than the fact that you're going to be on the Groove Cruise again and I will be seeing you in person again.
Yeah,
Um, so now that the album's out, and you've been, I know you can't stop producing music. So have you been working on new music going forward?
yeah. There's already the next few releases lined up, going into next year. Like we've still got some of the extended mixes from the album to release, but there's still new music. There's another vocal one coming out in November, I think, December. There's the transmission anthem. there's First Light, which is my first techno track, but it's like got lots of trance influences. It was featured on In Search of Sunrise. Um, and then I've got countless amount of tracks that I've been working on as well that I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet, or if it's going to turn into another album. But I don't know. As I say, I just can't stop making music. It's an addiction for me. And if I don't write music, like if I'm busy with gigs or whatever, then it kind of builds up inside me to the point where I just feel that I need to write a melody, and then that's sometimes when the good ones come, because you've had a bit of a break from writing melodies and it just all comes out of you. That's what I find. So I'm kind of hoping that happens again soon.
Awesome. I'm curious, how did the track end up on In Search of Sunrise? Was it 18 or 19 we're on?
The latest one.
Yeah, it's a great track. How, first of all, I'm glad that Marcus has kept In Search of Sunrise going,
Mhm.
and with various other artists. But why was that track chosen for that mix?
I think the style Martis is pushing right now is the euphoric techno, and when we were together in the studio in Miami after Groove Cruise at the start of this year, he was showing me all of his new tracks, all the euphoric techno and the X tracks that he's releasing now. I was really inspired by that sound and his transmission set last year, which was this whole new fusion of trance and techno. You got the euphoric break with the techno rumble and drive, which is amazing. So I was really inspired by that, and I was just working on a lot of techno stuff earlier this year, and that was one of them that I wrote, and I sent it to them, and it had a bit of a different drop at first. It kind of changed into another track, and basically the feedback was to just keep it the original idea from the breakdown and then go back into the techno drop. So I changed it and sent it back over to them, not really like with the intention to have it on In Search of Sunrise. But then when they said that they were looking for tracks for In Search of Sunrise, they decided to use that one on the mixes. It just fit the style that they were looking for, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Marcus is known for these rabbit hole sets and um, releasing as his alias Dakota. So I was just curious how that came about because that, and I feel so. Will your techno? You probably can't tell me, but will your techno track be for Coldharbour Black, or will it be on another label?
Yeah, pretty sure. No, it'll be on Coldharbour Black. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And so, what is kind of other than the music? I know you have the transmission theme. Is there going to be kind of a set around the theme for transmission? Because I
Well,
know transmissions kind of changed this year based on how things were scheduled.
yeah. Well, transmission's obviously on my mind a lot coming up at the end of this month, and it's for sure going to be the biggest arena that or stage that I've played on. But yeah, I mean, I can't say what I'm going to play yet, but you know, right now this period of time is like still in the album phase. Like I've just worked on all this music for the best part of 3 years. So if there's a time to play the music from the album, it's going to be now. But yeah, I'm working on bootlegs and stuff as well, just to keep it interesting.
Yeah, and you played at Luminosity. Your set's up on YouTube. What was that experience playing on the beach to like a crowd that was ready for your music?
It was great. Yeah, it was fun because I wasn't too sure what to expect. I was on second on the last day, so I was a bit worried. After 4 days, maybe people would be a bit tired and there wouldn't be much energy. But as the set progressed, the energy just kept getting more and more, and I was playing a lot of the album tracks for the first time there, and the reactions were so good. It was such a fun set to play. It was like a greenhouse though, in that they had like a tent thing over it, and it was dead sunny, so I was really hot. But yeah, I absolutely loved Luminosity. It was so good to play there finally. As I've been waiting to play there for like a couple of years because it kept getting delayed because of the COVID situation and stuff. But yeah, it was such a good crowd that day. Everyone was really, really up for it.
Is there a festival or club that you're dying to play that you haven't played yet?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to play at a State of Trance. I'd love to play at a State of Trance and Dream State as well. Still haven't played for Dream State in the US. So them two are for sure. My goals for the coming months of the next year.
Awesome. And like I said, I think we've been on the same groove cruises, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can you explain what it's like to play on on a ship full of eager people? Because the
Uh,
groove cruise is just another level, which is why I keep returning. But
it's um it's just so interesting. Like all the different mixtures of people that are on board, just in their own little world, having a good time. It's um it's so unique because like everyone everyone that's there, they kind of just let go of like I know people do, I guess, on a trance night or just in clubbing in general, they kind of forget about all the worries. But this is like 4 days in. I think the weather plays a good part, or at least for me, because I'm not used to having amazing weather like that in January. It's just unique. Like this, it's just a fun atmosphere, isn't it? Like everyone just having a good time on
yeah,
this huge cruise ship in the middle of like the ocean, like with amazing weather and some of the best DJs in the world. Like, and just I guess it's the way people dress as well, or like sometimes not really dressing up, just like
yeah,
not much clothing.
yeah. I mean, I love that you can go all out with the themes on Groove Cruise, or some people don't, or some
Yeah,
people do in between. But like, everybody's having a good time, and
yeah. Some
it's
people
just
really do go all out. Like the costumes are amazing.
yeah, they're better than I can do. I'm just happy to be there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess because we're to this, what is other than Marcus and the artists that you've mentioned? Do you have any other musical influences that kind of drove you within the scene, or any mentors other than who we've spoke about?
Um. Well, there's always certain producers that I look up to and admire, like Giuseppe Ottaviani. I think he's a genius. The amount of amazing like music that he's released in the last decade is insane. Like, is I just think he's an absolute genius for the creativity and the melodies that he's come up with. Um, but for like production, I really love Old Sander Van Dorn and Orjan Nielsen. I always find myself listening to their stuff, and yeah, them are the main ones that I find myself going back to for inspiration whenever I feel I need just an injection of creativity on my music.
Yeah, like how do you distinct? I mean, how does one? I always wonder. You've had a lot of influences, and you've been in the scene for a long time, and you worked through this in college, and you were a DJ. How do you keep from kind of copying sounds that you've heard to make your own sound?
Well, I guess the difference between copying and being influenced is copying would be you're literally just listening to someone else's work and you're just recreating it. Whereas being influenced is you might listen to like a track and you're like, oh, I kind of like that groove, and you like try something that's just influenced by it. So it's not exactly the same. It just gives you a similar sort of feeling. Or like I listen to a melody and I'm like, I really like the way that melody sort of like I can feel the melody rather than like it just sounds good. Like it changes your mood, and so then I'm influenced to try and write a melody that hits me in that sort of way, rather than, because if you just copy a melody, then it's pretty obvious that you've, just copy someone else's work. So it's obvious when that happens to being influenced. I guess that's the difference.
Yeah, because I don't know. There's a whole kind of debates on, when people try to steal somebody else's sound, or I guess in the world of remixing and reconstructions of tracks, what makes the track unique remix versus like the original track.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the beauty of music. Some people like the original, some people like the remix. It's all subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Different people's tastes. Everyone's different.
Speaking of, will you be doing remixes of this album?
I think so. Yeah, not at the minute. I think I want to let the originals like have their own time to shine, and then later down the line, I'm sure we'll get some remixes. Just depends what we can do. It's just once you start working with other people or getting other people involved, then things just seem to take time. That's what I've learned. So I might just remix them myself.
Well, awesome. Well, for those that have not picked up on the album, check out Face the Future. It's on
No,
all
on
the
here. Sorry.
digital, and I'm sure
This
you
is-
can order it. Yeah, you can order
Yes.
the actual CD as pictured right there. For those that collect.
So it
Um,
feels so good to actually hold it finally.
I bet all your hard work and your Daxson music pretty much everywhere on social media, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast on
Thanks for having
this.
me.
It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad we could make it work. And everybody go check out the album. It's amazing. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I'll see
uh,
you on Groove Cruise.
yeah, definitely. We'll see you on Group Cruise. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening, and be safe out there.
Thanks. See you soon.